Leigh-Chantelle is a published author, international speaker, singer, songwriter and blogger, and she's also a vegan advocate who runs the website Viva La Vegan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Now, I definitely wanted to talk about the vegan stuff. I want to talk about some other issues first. So for our podcast, we definitely cover vegan stuff, animal rights stuff, but a wide range of other issues as well. And I think a lot of your work is relevant to activists, you know, regardless of which social movement they're in. They're very relevant to a wide range of causes, pretty much any causes. And one thing you've spoken about is being effective as an online activist. And I think there is a lot of disparaging comments about online activism, you know, getting called slacktivists and those kind of things. But we often defend online activism on the show, particularly because people, for example, with disabilities might be confined to only be able to do online activism, and that's obviously one case, but also other people might feel more comfortable with online activism, with anxiety and a wide range of other issues. So I think just generally for other people as well, it can be useful to complement other forms of activism as well. So do you have any thoughts on how you can actually be effective online, rather than, I guess, the critique of online activism is we like sign a petition and feel good about ourselves, but nothing really changes in the real world, I guess?
Yeah, I guess it's just picking what things you get involved with. And like you said, I fully agree with what you said. Like you have to use your skills and your abilities in the best way that you can. So if you're very good at writing, then you could write some blogs. You could write some articles for other popular blogs or some news websites. That's a really good way to get the message out. You could, if you're a speaker or if you're really good at educating people, it would be good to do some talks, like give some talks, and you can film that, put it on YouTube, put it on Vimeo, make a podcast out of it. I definitely have issues with people who go onto Facebook and just like posts or just share posts or just get involved in some sort of drama and think that that's being effective, because it's definitely not. And I just really think things like that are a complete waste of time. And I'm personally not on Facebook. I have a few pages on there, but I don't interact like with random sort of people on Facebook anymore, and it's amazing. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. It's so great. And I think it's just working out, I think it's with anything, you have to work out time management and energy management, and if you're good at doing certain things in the morning or in the afternoon or at night, you do those sort of things, and you can definitely work that into online stuff as well.
Yeah, I guess being on Facebook, you must have about 5 extra hours in your day compared to everyone else. I think it's amazing, like people, when they're using those kind of things, like don't even realize how much time they're taking up. Sometimes people might jump on at 7 o'clock and next thing just kind of look down and it's midnight or something like that, without actually anything really happening that much at all.
Well, definitely, and that's a really good thing to say, because definitely log out all the time. Like, I definitely suggest to people, don't have notifications or don't have things on your phone, like, or don't use them all the time if you have a phone with you, and that's the only way you can communicate. And you can do a lot of pre-scheduled things now. So if you go onto Facebook, in particular with a page, you can pre-schedule things for the week ahead, for the month ahead, and then that means, say, every Monday for an hour or two, you spend your time scheduling things for the next month or for the next week. And then you just go on whenever you have to. I only go onto Facebook Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and I just interact with people who've asked questions or have left messages and who've shared things, and I schedule everything else.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I know my partner Katie gives me a hard time because I've got notifications on my phone at the moment, so I'm actually being like that. As someone who resisted Facebook for many years, and I'm the same as you. I only use it as an admin for pages, but I'm an admin for 6 different pages, so yeah. I do have notifications go off all the time. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, rather than just kind of saying on there. And yeah, I definitely fall into that trap myself when I'm doing something else, like leaving Facebook open and just constantly getting distracted, and instead of that using the time really efficiently, and maybe go, I'm going to do an hour of online advocacy and do a bunch of posts and kind of have them going up for the next week or next few days or whatever. And I could definitely see how that time could be used a lot more productively in that way.
And you definitely don't need those notifications, Nick. Your life will not stop. The world will still continue if you don't check your Facebook or your Twitter in like 30 minutes or a day.
It is so funny being like that, as I said, as someone who resisted Facebook and was very self-righteous about it for many years. And it is quite funny, you kind of get stuck in that little world that like it's kind of the most important thing. And again, not to say that nothing important happens online. I think it is important to try and change attitudes, any way that, whether it's about animals or other issues online and in other ways as well. But at the same time, you kind of get so wrapped up in these things. And then I might, for example, go for a walk down the river with my dog. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that stuff is all carrying on and I'm separate from it. And it kind of doesn't seem so important all of a sudden. Whereas when you're kind of in that world, it's like, half an hour is such a huge amount of time. Like, oh, that article's old now and something else has come out, and it can kind of be overwhelming keeping up with everything going on there online.
And I think it's really important to be an effective person too, is to have that time out, whether you're having a walk with your dog, not going onto Facebook on the weekends, which I did for a few years before I did the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And actually giving yourself a break from things and not being like, oh, I have to be contactable all the time, because nobody does, unless you're a brain surgeon or something like that, where it actually is a life or death situation. No one needs to have those sort of things all the time.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing someone who'd actually got arrested for hacking, and so they were, I'm not sure if I don't think they were in prison, but they were, one of the conditions of their kind of being released on bail was that they couldn't use the internet. Yeah. And they're actually talking about, in some ways, even though they wouldn't agree with that restriction being placed on them, from another perspective, it was almost quite liberating and quite just like amazing to step outside of that and just saying how the day goes so slow, almost like time goes so slow almost. But I would imagine if all of a sudden you did like cut off your social media interactions, or at least reduce and did it in a really planned way, first of all, I think you'd realize how many hours you're actually devoting to it and whether you actually want to spend that much of your life doing that. But also, you'd have so much time for other things.
And that's my thing. Like the past couple of years, I've been really focused on actual one-on-one interaction and having meaningful relationships with people. And that, to me, that like I Skype with a lot of my friends, especially from overseas, and email quite a lot, and or phone and text. And the other stuff, to me, is just so superficial. And like, I don't think you're my friend if you just put a happy birthday notice on my wall once a year. I'm sorry, but we're not really friends, are we? But if you take the time to email me and fill me in on your life, and we hang out every now and then, whether that's in person or on Skype, that's really important to me. And I'm trying to get rid of the distractions from like online and a lot of things to really focus on the important things. And I dream about not having my phone. I dream about not being on social media all the time. And I just did a 10-day silent retreat, the Vipassana, over the last 6 days of last year and the first 6 days of 2015, and it was amazing. I loved not having anyone be able to contact me for that time and me not needing to have an excuse for it.
I think I remember reading a headline from the satire website The Youngian a while ago, and it was something like, friend connects with old school friend on Facebook, loses interest 30 seconds later. And I think Facebook is great for really like meaningless interaction. Oh, what are they doing? Oh, they've got a kid now. Okay. And then that's it. And it's like, well, you're spending so much time with this meaningless stuff. I definitely understand why you want to put your time into other things socially.
And the social media stuff too, it's like just the best of snippets of someone's life. You're not really getting to know someone that well in a lot of cases. So I really like deep, meaningful friendships and relationships.
Yeah. And so I guess still on the topic of online activism, we mentioned there can be some positives and there can be some good outreach and kind of education and changing attitudes, those kind of things online. But it can also be quite a negative space as well. And I know myself, for example, of doing both like in-person animal advocacy and online advocacy. and just how different that is, like how much more kind of upfront people are in their negative views. I think, you know, after doing, you know, sort of an infinite number of stores, countless number of stores over the years, and probably got about maybe 3 very mild negative comments, whereas it's quite a different thing online. People are much more confident in saying negative things. And so, yeah, I was wondering if you have any thoughts on trying to get the positive things out of online advocacy without it kind of weighing you down and being more of a negative space.
I think the main thing is just about communicating better in general and just be aware of what you're doing. And the main thing that I try to live by is act, don't react. And I think that's really important, like acting, not reacting to things people say. And a lot of people who are really, really negative online, there's a reason that they don't know how to communicate properly, or a reason that they're being quite aggressive or angry or judgmental. They're probably going through something and you don't understand what that is. You don't really know. So it's really hard sometimes that you have to just rise above that and just be, you know, say things in a non-emotional sort of way. Just stick to the facts, stick to the things, don't get emotional, don't be attached to things, and try and have a discussion if you can. If they're just trolling, or you know that it's not going to go anywhere, then just shut it down. There's no need to continue on with negativity.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, we spoke about this in the discussion which we'll play on your podcast, which we'll make sure we give a link for at the end. But I think from one perspective, we need to avoid infighting. But at the same time, I think often whenever there is sort of critical discussion about what's going on, often that is labelled as infighting. And, you know, while I definitely understand that, and while I don't want to spend all my time criticising what other people are doing, I wanted to get on doing with what I think is best. At the same time, I'm quite grateful that people have given critiques of the kind of activism I've done in the past, because if those critiques weren't out there and we're just like, well, anything for animals is great as long as it kind of comes from a good place, then I'd still be doing that stuff which I don't find as kind of effective or as honest or as kind of as comfortable with as I do, you know, with what I'm doing now. So I was wondering, any thoughts on how we kind of can have those discussions in the movement, like reevaluating what we're doing. Are we being effective? Are we kind of doing, you know, what we feel is best without it becoming too negative and time consuming and those kind of things?
I think it's just trying to have the discussion in a non-judgmental way, and I think that's really, really important. We as vegans are saying to people, we want you to do this, you need to do this is imperative that you do this, you should be a vegan, you should all the time. And it's like our whole life is about converting people or making people into something that's like what we are, instead of maybe just focusing on educating. And I find, and I was definitely like that, like I've been vegan for 18 years, and when I first went vegan, I was like, I'm just going to let people know the reason I went vegan, and they're going to be vegan as well. It's, you know, and that's definitely not how it goes. But I found over time just the way that I communicate with people and actually listen. You know that saying, if you want to be understood, then understand. If you want to be loved, then love. If you know, like that. And there's a few other things as well. But I feel that's really important, that if you actually want people to listen to you, then you need to be listening to people as well. And I think and I know there's a lot of arguments online about what's the best tactic or how we should do things. And I think it's really important to find out what people are interested in first. So that's a really good way, and you can do that online, you can do that in person. If they're really into bodybuilding, send them some links about, you know, some great vegan bodybuilders. If they're into gardening, send them some veganic gardening tips. If they're into health, send them some, you know, smoothie tips, or how to make whatever vegan food you like, lasagna for example. And there's just so many different things. Like if they're into feminism, the link between animals and females, or the way people use animals. And there's just so many different ways that you can actually do something good without maybe banging your head against a brick wall, and actually having a dialogue and respecting the other person as well, instead of just wanting to change them.
Yeah, I think that is important. And yeah, I think I do like that idea of there being not one form of advocacy. You know, it's like, oh, to promote veganism, we all have to sit in a room and give a talk. And it's like, well, that can be good for some people, but for other people, that is one of the most horrifying experiences for them, public speaking. I think it was the biggest fear after death. I know Jerry Seinfeld always had a joke that if people were at a funeral, they'd rather be the person in the casket than giving a speech at the funeral. So, yeah, I mean, we can't just say, just because I, for example, am very comfortable doing that, as to do it for a job and everything, it's no big deal. But it's not for everyone, and same with any other tactics. So I think that is a good idea to and something you often promote as well, like using your strength is really good. And I also think with the vegan advocacy, it's also one thing we've kind of picked up on as we've done the show. It's like, I think often as vegans, we can often think that, okay, we're vegan, we're in the right, and we're going to convince everyone else who is wrong. And I think there is some truth there. Obviously, I think that, in our society where we don't need to consume animal products, we shouldn't be. But at the same time, there are all these other issues going on. So if we're talking to someone as a vegan to a non-vegan, we shouldn't take the approach that, we've got nothing to learn from them. It's only them who can learn from us, because we can learn other things about, from non-vegans, for example. Men could probably learn a lot from women about feminism, for example, whether they're vegan or not. Or we might learn about, like, veganism obviously has environmental benefits, but we might learn from a transport advocate about sustainable transport, for example, which is also important for the environment as well. So I think that idea of moving away from the idea, it's like, okay, vegans are in the right, everyone else is wrong, and it's all about the vegans convincing the non-vegans, and like there's some truth to that, but it's not the only issue going on. There's so many different important issues going on.
I did a really good panel at Vita Vegan Con, which is a vegan bloggers conference in Portland, Oregon, maybe 2 years ago. And it was called Ethics Beyond the Plate. And it was really cool because there was I think there was 5 of us and a moderator, and we were all all vegan, a lot of feminist, environmental, and we were just talking about all these different things. It was just so great. It was one of my favorite panels I've been on, actually, just hearing everyone sort of, I guess, what their line. Like, say, for example, some people were quite okay to buy second-hand leather products or silk products because it's not been created for them, whereas that's something I would still not do. And then other people are quite okay to go to department stores or major sort of multinational companies and support those sort of things, and as long as it's not vegan. And even the massive amount of vegan products that we have now, a lot of it is imported from the UK, US, Europe, and so there's a lot of food miles, there's a lot of transportation, there's a lot of things that go into that, not to mention the plastic and things like that, which is vegan. Definitely it's not hurting the animals, but what about the people, what about the environment? And there's all these questions that need to be asked, but maybe not judge each other on where our limits are or where we draw that line, because that's up to us, really. I think also with stuff harming the environment, I think it's often important to point out that I think often as animal advocates we focus on the domesticated animals, like the farmed animals, those kind of thing, there's obviously justifications for that. That's where a whole lot of animals are killed and those kind of things. But at the same time, we can sometimes forget about the free living animals who are outside of these industries. So when we say products harm the environment, they often do harm other animals. When we have deforestation and animals are killed and harmed and displaced and all those kind of things in that. And I guess a big debate in Perth, I think the vegans may be a bit more separated from other movements, but in Melbourne, again, varies from individual to individual, but I think there is more of a focus around other issues as well, like some of the issues you brought up. And I think there's a big discussion and a big kind of debate in the vegan movement of, is vegan just the thing we all have to do, or is it just one step amongst many things we have to do? Also be concerned about the environment beyond just I'm vegan, I'm helping the environment, also considering there's other issues you mentioned. And I know there's been a lot of talks and those kind of things going on in Melbourne around those kind of issues. And obviously I fit with the side that veganism is kind of part of social justice, but it's the beginning, it's not the end of it. There's so many other ethical issues we should be concerned about. And I would agree with that fully. Veganism was my first step to have my eyes open. Like, I was involved with feminist stuff before that, but that wasn't the reason I went vegan. And it just opened my eyes, because I guess, like, when you're studying college or university, you're open to learning. So once you're open to learning in any aspect, I find you can, you know, find other things that you're interested in. And I think that's really important, to always be open and willing to change and evolve, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you said you kind of use that as a starting point, and I definitely do know people like that. It's like they go vegan and they start kind of questioning everything around them, and that's one way people can go, and obviously I think that's the kind of direction we should be encouraging people to move in. But I think other times people have quite the opposite reaction. They maybe not into politics, not into sort of social justice, then all of a sudden they discover veganism, and it kind of turns them away for other issues, because they're like, oh, you know, sexism, that's not bad, the real injustice is the animals, or racism, that's not bad, it's all about the animals. And so sometimes people take that position that animal suffering is so horrible that nothing else is important, and spending our time on anything else besides animals is a waste of time and trivial and those kind of things. So there seems to be those deviating paths that vegans seem to go, and obviously I favour the path that you've gone on, obviously, but it is interesting, like, thinking about why some people go off in one way and others kind of just stop at veganism.
I think also have to keep in mind with people, it's so overwhelming. There's so many things that we can learn about. There's so many things that we can change in our lives. And to say, you should be vegan, feminist, environmentalist, blah, 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 like all that all the time. And then people just go, oh my, I just can't handle that all at once. You know, just think about little steps. Little steps still get to the same destination, you know. And I just find it really, like what you're saying about the different paths that people go. People, like most vegans, forget that humans are actually animals too. And I think that really needs to be focused on sometimes.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that it can be overwhelming, especially because obviously when me and you are talking about veganism, some people are talking about veganism as some kind of like health cleanse we do for 21 days, but we're talking about animal rights and justice for animals and those kind of things. So it doesn't just mean what we eat, but also the shoes we wear and our shampoos and everything, trying to avoid animal testing and all these different issues. And I can definitely understand, I guess, on some level, the reluctance to take on this broader philosophy. So for example, as kind of vegan advocates like us with Animal Rights Advocates, our group, like, we don't promote meat-free Mondays, we don't promote vegetarianism, we don't, basically just promote veganism. And people, obviously, we promote that message. People can do less, we can promote veganism, they can choose to go vegetarian or do meat-free Monday, whatever they want to do, but we don't kind of set the bar lower and encourage people to eat free-range eggs or whatever. And that in itself is seen as kind of quite radical in the vegan movement, or the animal movement, seen as, promoting that vegan message without going, well, ideally go veganism, but if you don't, at least eat free-range eggs or at least go vegetarian or whatever. And so that seemed as radical. But then obviously from doing my thesis on this and being active on this issue, I've heard of, linking animals in with critiques of capitalism. And then so I can kind of, while I totally agree with those critiques, I certainly understand while it can be overwhelming people, it's like, okay, I've got to worry about what I eat and also my shoes, and I also got to bring down capitalism on the side. So I do understand that these kind of issues we talk about on the podcast, such as capitalism and feminism, and bringing all these different issues together, maybe can be overwhelming for some people.
And think about the generation we live in too. Everything is accessible, especially online. Like all this information. When I became vegan, I don't even think the internet was sort of big then. Beginning of 97. And so I would like get mail from people about things in DVDs or CDs to listen to. And if you see all this stuff, if you become vegan and then you see, oh, I've got to do this and this as well, and that can definitely put a lot of people off. Like, I went vegetarian for 2 years before I was vegan, and then when I was vegan, I discovered my shoes are leather, and then I just got them replaced by vegan wares in Melbourne. Like all my old shoes, I just got them the leather replaced by vegan wares, vegan microfiber. I know people can't afford to do that, so they might not be able to do that, and they keep wearing their vegan shoes, their non-vegan shoes, until they no longer exist. And then, one of my friends at work, he said, "Oh, what about the soap you use? That won't be vegan." And I'm like, "Oh, really? I didn't know that." So then you find out something new and you change it. I was talking about how to you keep evolving with you learn this isn't vegan, or you should do this.
Yeah, you're talking about people getting rid of their shoes or not, depending on what they can afford, those kind of things. Yeah,
definitely. So just do as much as you can when you can, for as long as you can, type vibe.
Yeah, I was talking to actually someone who recently went vegan. They emailed us, asking for us to send them a starter pack, and they were saying, "Oh wow!" Like I realized, like you said, it's like, "Oh wow!" But also, like my wallet isn't leather. My wallet is leather, and it's not vegan. My shoes and everything, and I was kind of saying, well, it's really an individual decision what to do with those products. I said that some people choose to get rid of them, but others, like you said, might not be in a financial position to do that, in which case they might just wear it out, and of course when they replace it with a vegan version. But I was like, well, it's kind of not really for me to say what the best things. Like, here are kind of your options, and do what feels right to you, and do what you can do within your financial means, and those kind of things, I guess.
And I said a few things on a vegan fashion panel I was on as well. Like, you could sell all your non-vegan stuff on eBay or something and put that money towards an animal charity that you support. And you could also bury the clothes, put the animals back, give them a proper burial.
Yeah, well, I guess, again, whatever feels right for you. But we've mentioned veganism a few times, so maybe you mentioned you've been vegan for a long time. Do you want to talk about what made you go vegan in the first place?
Yeah, well, I guess, so I went vegetarian first, and I was in, year 10 at school, and my family, every Friday or Saturday night, we used to have roast leg of lamb, and my sister and I liked a particular piece of the leg of lamb, and I knew it was a lamb's leg because that's what it was called. And one day I asked my mum, what is that piece of the leg? And she's like, "Oh, that's the Achilles tendon." And I remember going, "Oh wow, I've got one of those." And I looked down at my Achilles tendon, the living, breathing body, and looked at the dead flesh of someone that used to live in front of me, and I finally made that sort of connection between life and death and the life that I was about to consume, and I just went, "Oh no, can't do it anymore."
Wow.
And then I stopped eating red meat and flesh, and then that was for maybe 4 months or something, and then we went on a camp for school where the city kids go to the country and look after all the animals and that, and I was looking after chickens, lots of chickens, and so I couldn't eat chickens after that. And then I just would probably only eat calamari and like honey or chocolate and things that had animal products in them. And then I found out because I was vegetarian because I didn't want to kill any animals or harm them or anything, and I thought being vegetarian was the right way to do that. And when I found out about the dairy industry and the egg industry, and that those processes are horrible for the animals and worse than death, I think, in a lot of cases, and I just went, "Oh wow, I can't have anything to do with that." And that was the beginning of '97. And then, I just learned over time that, honey's not vegan, so I stopped having that. And, it was just sort of like a gradual transition for me once I made that connection between life and death, really.
And so once you became vegan, did you become sort of a more active animal advocate right away, or were you just kind of doing your own thing as a vegan, then the activism came later? So
that was '97. So I actually am a musician in the past, and was getting a lot of street press, music street press, and there was one called Drum Media from Sydney that I used to get sent to me every week. and they had an ad in there about something to do with the Vegan Society in New South Wales. And they sent me some information and connected me with Maureen from the Vegetarian Vegan Society in Queensland. And I went along to some of the things, and I volunteered a lot with Maureen, like for the newsletters and at some of the stalls. But the people were a lot older than me, and I didn't really have much, like, I couldn't really connect with them that well. So I sort of had a bit of a break from that for a while, and and then I started VivaLaVegan.net in, it'll be 10 years this year.
Wow, well done.
So, yeah, thank you. So, 2005, the end of 2005, after I finished my naturopathy course, and I went interstate a lot to promote my calendar. I started a vegan recipe calendar first, and that's where most of my friends I met, like interstate at Sydney and Melbourne, and most of my vegan friends were interstate at that stage. And so I knew a few people here and there, and jumping to a few years after, you know, with Viva La Vegan and all the stuff that I do online, I knew a lot of people online or that I had met interstate. And I started, I was dating someone that wasn't very appropriate for me, and I really was needing to feel like I belonged in some sort of group. And then I made a conscious decision to hang around more vegan people. And so I started hanging around with vegan people, and it was around about that stage I was starting to put on a vegan festival, Brisbane's first vegan festival. And just made these amazing friends, and a lot of them like volunteered or came to meetings for the festival, and a lot of those people are still like my closest friends now. And then I started doing a lot of overseas traveling and speaking for like animal rights and to vegan events, and met a lot of people like in the US, and then just recently to Southeast Asia, and have been speaking at a variety of events there. And yeah, it's just sort of evolved and just became like, I really started Viva La Vegan just for my recipe calendars, and then people would say, oh, you should add this, oh, you should do a blog, you should do a podcast, you should do this, you should put a search bar in there. And it's just been all this like support and suggestions from fans and friends over the years, and it's just sort of evolved. And someone just asked me one time, I don't know if it was Sydney, Melbourne, or Adelaide or Canberra, and they said, "Oh, can you do a talk at the festival?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So that's pretty much
in
how
the deep
it starts.
Yeah, you mentioned podcasting in there, so maybe you talk about how you got started with podcasting, and also maybe more generally like how podcasting can be effective in terms of activism and changing attitudes and informing people, those kind of things.
I just think it's really important for people to have their own owned media, and like, because I do a lot of social media marketing and content creation, and like training for people with all things online. That's like where I get my money in my business. And it's very important. I find there's so many people who just have a Facebook page and that's it, and that's their website, and that's someone else owns that. That's Facebook. And sooner or later, Facebook's not going to be that popular. And I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this who would know that if they run a page, a lot of people don't actually see what they post to their fans of the page anymore, because only 5% of your fans of your page will actually see what you post in an organic reach. So realistically, you have to pay to be seen on Facebook. Now Twitter's got adverts, so similar sort of thing. Even Instagram's got advertising. It's the oldest trick in the book. You get someone in on a like free product, you get them attached, and then you have to pay for it. So things like that, you have to focus on things that are your own, like your website, your email list, podcast, creating videos, creating ebooks, creating articles. There's just so many things that you can do online that is your own, and that you author yourself, or you get other people to write for you, or for your business, or for your website. And podcasting and videos in particular are really good, because a lot of people have mobile devices that they watch or listen to things from, and you can do it anytime. So for podcast, you could download however many podcasts you've got, and you could listen to them in your car when you're riding at your bike, when you're exercising in the gym. Same thing for a lot of YouTube videos or even Vimeo videos. You know, there's so many times that you can interact with these videos, and videos as well put on Facebook now, so upload them to Facebook and to YouTube. But I think podcasts are really good because especially if you have some interesting guests, or in particular if you're quite chatty or you actually like people, you can, you know, have some really good interaction and just, you know, get great feedback or other people's opinions and views on things. So I really like podcasts. It's a really great way for the vegan message to get out there too. And you can relate veganism to so many different things, so you could speak on many different podcasts that people have. And I think with anything, it's really important to actually commit to things, and to actually, so for example, every week you do a podcast, or every 2 weeks you do a podcast, or once a month you do a podcast, but actually keep to that goal. So say you're like, oh my god, I've got a new podcast every single day, I'm going to have a new podcast. You do that for 20 days, you get bored, it's actually a lot of work, all this stuff, and then you don't create anything for the next 3 months. So that's really not good. You need to actually schedule your time properly, and I'm all about schedules. You need to schedule your time properly, and you need to commit to certain days and times. And if you can do that, you can get some really good stuff happening.
Yeah, well, we haven't managed that yet, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, in terms of your podcast, I know in the past it was you hosting it and your videos going out in podcast form. You've recently got a new co-host. You want to talk about the, I guess, new format of the show, or how it's changed with the new co-host?
Yeah, so 10 years of Viva La Vegan, it's sort of, I've been getting bored with a few things, so I've been asking a few of my friends for some tips or some advice on how I can update a few things. And one of my friends, Jeremy, suggested another one of our mutual friends, Chris Jackson, and I actually do a podcast together, because, you know, we're both good friends, we respect each other's opinion, but we have a few opinions that are quite removed from each other. And but, you know, we both like each other, and we're both chatty, and we just, you know, have fun together and don't get upset with the other person's opinion. And so that's really cool, because before I was just doing some random like vlogs or talks about something here and there, but I didn't really commit to anything. And I'd commit to producing a lot of videos. So I'd have a one video Q&A series every Tuesday, and I'd have interviews quite often as well, like at least once every 2 weeks, and some vlogs here and there. So now it's just something different, and adding a guest is always good because you can bounce off each other, and we also have other guests as well, which is fun.
Yeah, I think that's great. I know I definitely envy you or anyone else who can do a podcast by myself, because I definitely couldn't do it, and some people can manage it, but yeah, I definitely find it so much easier with someone else rather than just the one person.
Definitely.
Do you want to give any links for your podcast, people want to listen, or also any other links you want people to check out? Anything you want to plug before we go?
Well, definitely. Like for the podcast, everything's on vivalavegan.net, and you can find all the links there, and especially to our social media channels. And you can go to Podomatic, which is where I host the podcast, and that gets over to iTunes, Stitcher, Scatter Radio, and a few others. So yeah, people can follow the podcasts there.
Okay, great. And do you want to give the Viva La Vegan website or any other sites for yourself, or is everything linked to from there?
So yeah, Viva La Vegan has a lot of things on there, so it will link to all the podcasts, all my videos. I'm doing some new how-to food tutorials at the moment. I just have a new film and editing friend, Cameron Tonks, who has a YouTube channel, Cam on Fruit. So we've just recorded some this week, and they'll be starting next week. So yeah, everything will go through there. But yeah, you can find Viva La Vegan on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, SoundCloud, iTunes, Podomatic, and vivalavegan.net. And and then I also have my Leigh-Chantelle.com website as well, if people want to find out more about like my writing or my speaking and training and music.
Okay, great. Well, this has been a long time in the making. I know we set this up ages ago, so it's been great to finally talk to you and get this done. So thanks a lot. And you can find all of those links that Leigh-Chantelle referred to for Viva La Vegan and the podcast and everything else on our website at progressivepodcastaustralia.com, and we will link to everything there for Leigh-Chantelle.